In this program, we'll teach you the fundamentals of shooting sporting events for both entertainment or for analysis by players or coaches. We'll give you shooting tips that'll help you cover any sporting event, and through the eyes of a couple cameramen, we'll give you specific shooting strategies that'll help you cover 8 different sports. The team sports of football, baseball, basketball, and soccer, and the individual sports of tennis, swimming and diving, golf, and gymnastics. And we'll give you some marketing and some fundraising ideas that can help you make money shooting sports. One thing that's especially nice about shooting sports on videotape is that it doesn't require a lot of equipment. As a matter of fact, what you're seeing here will probably cover all your shooting requirements. In selecting a camera, pick one with a variable speed zoom lens and a built-in microphone. This will give you a decided advantage over the old silent film type with fixed focal length lenses. A good sturdy tripod, a portable, durable VCR recorder, plenty of tapes and batteries, and you're in business. You know, most sporting events are pretty well lighted, either by the daylight or by stadium or arena lighting. So you won't need to haul around a lot of lighting gear. Make sure you have durable, protective cases for all your gear. And it's a good idea to keep a good sturdy length of rope around in case you have to haul that gear up to a scaffold or shooting tower. And if you are hauling your equipment in that way, make sure you tie the rope around the case itself and not just the handles. These items are almost as important as the camera and the tape when it comes to shooting sports outside. A little rain, or for that matter, a lot of rain, won't stop a football game. And you have to be prepared to not let it stop you either. Now, these plastic trash bags make a great camera and recorder protector. You just tape the bag over your camera with gaff tape to protect it from rain or snow. And don't forget your own foul weather gear or a good umbrella to protect yourself. And remember, if you're going to use one of these, you may need an assistant to hold it for you while you shoot. It's a good idea to make a list of your equipment and place it inside one of your carrying cases. And then practice unpacking and packing your equipment. Practice it until it becomes second nature to you. You'll have plenty of things to think about when you're at the shooting location without worrying about losing a lens cap or bringing extra batteries. Well, that's all the equipment you need for shooting sports, and hopefully you're pretty familiar with using it. If not, this would be a good time to review the learning tape Shooting Home Video, The Basics, because in the rest of this program, we're going to be dealing with specific shooting strategies to help you capture all the action and not so much the technical aspects of using your equipment. This is Perry Smith. He's one of the home video producers who's going to be showing us how to shoot sports. Now, Perry shoots a lot of sporting events, and he tells me there's some fundamental routines that anybody interested in shooting sports should always remember. Right, Perry?
That's right. It doesn't matter what sport you're shooting. There's some things to remember in pre-production that can make or break a successful shoot.
Like what?
Well, some of this may sound elementary. In fact, they're such simple things they can be easily forgotten. I use this checklist to make sure I'm not overlooking anything. This list tells me where the event is being played, what time it starts, how I get there, how much travel time I need, and how much setup time I need, which, of course, depends on what I'm shooting.
Have you ever missed a game?
Well, almost. I was scheduled to shoot a high school football game once, and I got there on time all right, too. But I didn't have the proper credentials to get down the playing field.
Oh, what happened?
Well, I talked to one of the coaches, and it all worked out. But it was an embarrassing lesson to learn. Now I make sure I have the proper credentials to get to my shooting location at the game site. You know, sometimes I have to get permission to shoot from special locations.
Such as?
Well, depending on the game site, I may want to shoot from the top of a building across the street or from a scaffold I'd have to put up on somebody else's property.
All part of pre-production, right?
It's all on the checklist, right?
How do you choose a shooting location once you're at the game?
Well, that all depends on what sport I'm shooting and why I'm shooting it. If I'm shooting for entertainment, I shoot differently than if I were shooting for analysis for a coach, say. Basically, though, I always concern myself with where the sun is if I'm shooting in daylight. I always want it behind me somewhere. And I pick a spot that'll give me enough height and distance to cover the entire playing area in my wide shots. First of all, the baseball that you see on television is shot for entertainment and not for the coach's or player's analysis. If I were showing someone how to shoot this game for entertainment, I'd get right up there in the crowd where a good part of the story is. Depending on where the sun is and where it'll be going, I'd put my camera on either the first base or the third base line, at least halfway from home plate to the base. I also get myself up high enough like this to get a nice perspective of the whole field and make sure I can cover all the action. From my camera's point of view, I can shoot a nice wide shot like this, and I can zoom into key action like this. I also want to make sure my shot is wide enough before the pitch is thrown to not lose the action. And when I'm zoomed in tight, I watch the action outside of my frame with my left eye. Now, this takes a lot of practice, but it's the only way to keep up with uncontrolled action.
Now, how does this differ from shooting baseball for analysis?
Well, shooting any sport for analyzing the athlete's performance really depends on what the coach wants to see. In baseball, coaches are usually most interested in their players' batting, pitchers' pitching, and the performance on the infield. All this can be shot from 3 camera locations, either during a game or in practice. A camera position on either side of the plate will give you excellent batter analysis tape, and a camera behind the plate, and a little to one side or the other, depending on whether the batter is right or left-handed, will give you great pitcher-batter and infield play analysis. I shoot from here for a right-handed batter and from the other side for a left-handed batter. I set my camera up so my lens is as high as the middle of the strike zone, and I keep my shot wide enough to include the whole batter's box. This position lets the coaches and players study the batter's stance, his swing, and his eye contact with the ball. Obviously, a good coach could detect the most minor flaw from this position. Now, from over here behind the plate, I can get a real nice perspective of the pitcher's motion, his pitch, and the batter's reaction to it. And I can widen to follow the action of the infield and the batter's run to first base. You might notice there's a safety consideration here. Depending on the skill level of the players, you might want to shoot this angle from the backstop there. A foul tip or a wild pitch could wipe me and this camera out and ruin a perfectly good career. Now, the batter analysis position over there is pretty safe. In fact, once the shot's been set, you don't even have to look through the camera. Sometimes I just stand and watch the pitcher get ready to throw, so I know when to turn the camera on and off. This saves me a lot of tape.
Well, thanks, Perry. You sure make shooting baseball look easy. I've heard that football's the most difficult sport to film. Mostly because the action is so varied and the starts and stops. Any truth to that?
There's a lot of truth to that. And again, it depends on whether you're shooting for entertainment or analysis.
How about a football lesson?
You got it. As in baseball, I select my football shooting camera locations based on what I'm shooting for. For a good general read of a football game, we're sitting in the best seats in the house. I set my camera here at midfield and try to get about 50 feet above the playing field so I can shoot down onto the play patterns.
Yeah, and I noticed the sun is behind us, too.
That's right. You don't want to shoot from the east side of a field at an afternoon game. From here, I can cover all the action without having to worry about burn from the sun. The next best place for a camera at a football game is up high in the end zone, and it would be ideal to run 2 cameras, one from each position. If you're fortunate enough to have shooting towers in the end zone and at midfield, you can cover anything any coach would ever want to see. From here, my zoom lens will let me isolate anything I need to, or any specific action a coach might want to concentrate on. And also, I can widen out to include as many players as possible in my frame. If I were shooting general coverage of the game, I'd shoot from here and pick up almost all of the action on the field from the time the offense comes out of the huddle, through the play, until the ball is blown dead. To really capture all the human drama of football, all the color, as the commentators call it, you really need to have 2 cameras and 2 people shooting. You can cover all the action from here with the master camera. The other camera is what we call a rover.
And the rover wanders about shooting inserts that you can edit in later.
That's right. The rover can capture the emotional impact of individual efforts, shoot sideline activity, shoot the crowd reactions, and shoot the cheerleaders.
What about shots of the scoreboard?
I try to keep the shots of the scoreboard to a minimum. It's real easy to get hung up on the scoreboard and miss a key play. I try to only show the scoreboard after a score and an extra point when the teams are getting ready to kick off again.
What do coaches want to see?
Well, shooting for a coach is a whole different ballgame than shooting for entertainment. Coaches know exactly what they want to see on tape, so it's really important to clearly understand what they're after. They almost never want to see scoreboard shots, and they definitely don't want to see the cheerleaders. Well, not on tape, anyway.
Well, what are coaches usually looking for?
They're usually interested in shooting their own offense and their own defense. Let's shoot this scrimmage down here, and I'll show you what I mean from my camera's point of view.
Great.
When I'm shooting an offensive running play, I start my camera while the team's on its way to the line of scrimmage. I compose the shot to include as many offensive players as possible, and I keep the ball carriers at the back edge of my frame. Then, as the play action starts, I try to keep the ball carrier in the center of the frame. If the runner breaks away, I'll let him get up to the leading edge of the frame as I pan, because if anybody's going to catch him, they'll be coming from behind. On passing plays, I keep the passer at the edge of the frame and stay wide enough to show his pass protection. When he throws the ball, I stay on him just long enough to make sure he isn't going to get sacked. Then I pan down the field to the receiver. I don't try to follow the ball in the air. The same is true on punts and kicks. I shoot the kicker, then pan to the area where the ball will come down. Coaches want to see players, not footballs. When I'm shooting the defense, I try to include as many defensive players as possible. The coaches usually want to see how their defense is reacting, which means they aren't really interested in what the offense is doing. On defensive pass coverage, I stay wide and shoot the target area where the ball is being thrown. That way, on an interception, the coaches can see how their defense picks up their blocking assignments once the ball's been caught.
What do you say we wander over to the soccer field so you can show us what shooting that's all about?
I'm ready. You know, the techniques for shooting soccer and for shooting basketball are almost identical.
How's that?
Well, mostly because they're both fast-moving sports of continuous action. See, neither has the starts and stops of football or baseball, so in order to capture all the action, you pretty much have to set up in one place, turn the camera on, and keep up with the game.
I see. Where's the best spot to shoot soccer from?
The best camera position at a soccer game is at any corner of either end zone, about 30 feet away from the end line and up on a tower if one is available. You can cover the whole game from there. For close-up inserts or to follow the action on a particular part of the field, a mobile sideline camera is best, and a stationary sideline camera up high is next best.
Ha! Yeah, but what if I don't happen to have a tower on me, or a dolly for that matter?
Well, you can rent scaffolds or cherry pickers to get yourself up in the air. If you're shooting for a school, though, there's a good chance that might be in their sports budget. Other than that, you've got to be creative. You can shoot from the top of your car or van, and for a dolly, you can use a golf cart and have your assistant drive it. In fact, in some practice drills, coaches like to get the golf cart right out on the field behind the action.
Do you have any special shooting strategies for soccer?
From the corner position, I use my zoom lens to try to concentrate on the action around the ball. I try to always stay wide enough so the ball isn't going to be kicked out of my frame. That way, I'm also seeing all of the players who are actually involved in the action. And down at field level from the sideline, I can concentrate on tight shots of isolated plays. These are usually shots that the coaches specifically request, like penalty kicks, ball skills of key positions, like the shooting techniques of the center forward and the wings. They're also great shots for the rover if you can have two people shooting the game.
How about giving us some basketball shooting tips?
Sure. In fact, my partner, Brian Adams, is over in the gym shooting basketball right now. I have to stick around here and shoot some special teams footage for the coach, but if you'll head for the gym, Brian will be glad to show you the round ball ropes. He'll be the one with the camera.
Okay. Hey, thank you, Perry, for all your time and your tips.
Glad to help.
Hi, Coach.
Hi, Brian.
Mike Bradley. I'd like you to meet Coach Jack Kiefer. Jack, this is Mike Bradley.
Pleasure to meet you, Mike.
Mike's interested in learning how to shoot sports for home video. We've been covering a lot of sports from my point of view. How about telling Mike what you'd like to see from a coach's point of view?
Sure, I'd be glad to.
While you do that, I think I'll grab some shots from up above.
Coach, in your opinion, where's the best position for shooting basketball action?
We favor the mid-court position, just as you see Brian has the camera there right now. This way we can get half the court at a time, which gives us a 5-on-5 situation. And when we do have transition in the game from one end to the other, you're just going from one position of the camera to the other, just two positions really, and it just flows with the game and you can follow it.
Now, what are you specifically looking for? Defense, offense, or combination, a little bit of both, when you're using that as a training tape?
Sometimes we'll just deal with one at a time. We'll deal with a defense at a time, or we'll deal with an offense at a time. But most of the time, we'll cover the whole game at a wide respect so we can see the patterns, so we can see the team defense and things of that nature.
Do you think this helps an athlete to see himself on videotape?
Oh, it helps a great deal. Not only will we do it during the game, we'll do it in practice with a shooter, say his technique.
And you can pinpoint the action.
We can pinpoint it. In a game, we can dub our voice into the situation, and the kid can be watching the film on his own in a room by himself, and our voice will be there saying, now, did you see that? Run that back, repeat that, and see what you did.
Run that back, David. You did not block that man out. He got on the inside and obviously was in a dangerous area. We got awful sloppy, awful sloppy.
Now, if you set up in any other position, for really action sounds and everything, where would you pick up sounds from the crowd? Should you?
We will go to the corner down in here at the end of the court, kind of the corner of the court, and get the full view, and then you don't have as much camera. You have one distance shot and close shot, but you don't have as much camera movement at all.
Very good.
And we'll even put, add crowd noises to it.
Okay.
And the kids enjoy just the monotonous of seeing something quiet.
Sure.
It lightens it up a little bit.
I can't thank you enough for giving us tips on shooting basketball. Good luck to you and the guys.
Glad to have you.
Great.
Well, Mike, think you have a handle on how to shoot basketball?
I think so.
Good. How about a swim?
I'm ready.
Swimming and diving are obviously individual sports. And most coaches are really interested in helping their swimmers and divers by videotaping their performance for analysis. Right here would be the best place to shoot diving from. At a right angle to and just a few feet out from the end of the board. From here you can easily capture the diver's approach, the hurdle, and the dive itself.
Diving requires an intense amount of concentration, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it does. It's important that you don't distract the divers with your shooting techniques. You may even want to put a piece of gaff tape over the blinking tally light. Here's what you get from here. Now, if we watch that again in slow motion, you'll notice that I kept my shot wide enough that I didn't have to pan as the diver approached the end of the board. And I left enough headroom so the diver could reach the apex of the dive without my having to tilt up to follow the action. My only camera move was this slight tilt down to follow the diver into the water.
And that was so we could watch the diver's action without being distracted by camera movement.
That's right. It's important to let the action be the action. Now, there are a lot of things you can do with swimming action. To cover a meet, the primary camera position is at a right angle to the starting blocks. From here, you can get the whole race, including the start and the swimmer's entries into the water. You can zoom in on lane action to follow close duels. You can cover the turns of an individual swimmer, or widen to show all the lanes. And from this position, you can actually record the classic photo finish. Now, if you can shoot with another person, a great cutaway camera location is down there at the turn, where you can get head-on details of the turn and then zoom in for a close-up of the finish. And ideally, if you can muster up a third camera person, you can truck along the side of the pool and shoot great stroke analysis close-ups of the swimmer's movements.
Any creative suggestions for a dolly?
Yeah. On a smooth deck surface, riding side saddle in a wheelchair can make a pretty nice dolly. Of course, a lot of your success will depend on the person pushing you, too. Ready to pack it up and head for the gym?
Lead the way. Wow, there's a lot going on here.
That's true.
Yeah.
But shooting it really isn't as difficult as it looks. Actually, there are 8 individual events in a gymnastics meet, and they can all be shot pretty much the same way.
Really?
Really. First of all, it's important to remember that gymnastics is a highly individualistic sport. It's a beautiful sport to shoot on videotape. It's a great opportunity to capture the human individual effort, the symmetry and artistry of body movement. Gymnastics is a sport of competition for technical correctness. And since all of the events, except the floor exercise and the vault, take place in a relatively small area, capturing the performance is really pretty simple. My basic rule for shooting gymnastics is to shoot everything from floor height at a 45-degree angle to the action line of the event. This angle gives me a perspective that truly captures the choreography of the athlete. Unless I'm familiar with the routine, I keep my shot just wide enough to not lose the athlete from my frame. If I'm familiar with the routine, though, I can really capture the human drama by zooming in to study the intense concentration and the discipline of the gymnast. Watch this. Now, in the floor exercise, I try to watch the gymnasts warm up so I can get an idea of where the routine is going to take them. It's a fact, though, that most of the major moves take place along the diagonal lines of the exercise area, so I try to set my camera up just off the direction of one of the diagonals, near the corner, right about here. I keep my shot wide enough to cover most of the area laterally, so when the gymnast is tumbling across the other diagonal line, I can keep my panning to a minimum. Like I said before, the gymnast is the performance in this sport, not the camera person.
And your 45-degree to the action line rule, that holds true for all of these events?
Every one. And I stay at floor level because that's the level that the judges judge from. Coaches can best critique their athletes from that level because they're critiquing from the perspective of the judges.
I imagine the athletes themselves must get a lot out of this kind of footage.
Absolutely. I'd say that gymnasts and tennis players get the most personal benefit from watching themselves on tape.
Did you say tennis?
You bet. Are you ready for the courts?
Your serve.
Top-notch tennis players have to be as disciplined in their movements as gymnasts. Good coaches will tell you that a slight change in the grip or body position in the service can change a player's whole game. So it's important for players to be able to analyze their movements and to develop their skills so they're constant. It's best to shoot the whole match from opposite diagonal corners of the court with two cameras in like positions. You can only muster up one camera, though. It's always best to shoot from the end with the sun behind you, about 20 feet behind the baseline and up about 15 feet, either in the stands or on a tower. Let me show you what I mean. This point of view will give you a good perspective of all the action and the performance of both players. Obviously, you can see the advantage of having a reciprocal angle of this shot from the other side, but then again, the players will switch sides at the end of each set, so you can get the same shots of each player if you cover the whole match. To really analyze an individual player's performance, the best position is down here on the net, on the opposite side from the player you're shooting. From here, you can stay tight on your player and give them some great footage of their specific body movements.
I suppose some players and coaches like to see specific parts of their game from this angle.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes they only want to see serves, or just forehands, or just backhands, or just net play. It's like any other sport. You have to ask what they're looking for, and then it's up to you to deliver it. Thanks, guys.
Well, Bob, I think you've taught us about everything we need to know about shooting sports. I hope I can remember it later.
You can always rewind the tape and take a look at the sports you're interested in shooting.
Instant replay, right?
Instant replay. Before the replay, though, we've got one other sport we're supposed to cover. How about all those weekend golfers out there?
Can I ride in the cart?
Sure, come on.
How did you get started shooting sports video, Brian?
Well, actually, a friend of mine who coached the Little League baseball team asked me if I'd come out and shoot some of the games just to give the boys a little morale boost. They weren't playing very well at the time, see, and so I did. And the kids' parents started ordering copies of the game tapes, and so I started making a little money.
Great.
And then a high school football coach asked me if I'd shoot some of their games and put together a highlight tape at the end of the season so the booster club could use it to make money for the team. And the thing started just to snowball after that because the high school had a budget for shooting sports.
Lots of money-making opportunities, huh?
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of high school teams who'd use tape and a lot of independent sports leagues who'd like their game shot. Country clubs host lots of golf and tennis tournaments, too. Some people I know shoot nothing more than company golf tournaments and then pay the country club for providing a list of scheduled outings. Hi, Pat. How you doing?
Right. Here we are, the last link.
Yeah. Now, first of all, it's obviously impossible to cover an entire golf tournament with one camera, so you have some choices. You can follow one player around the entire course and help him with his stroke and shot analysis, or you can cover one hole with a couple different camera positions and show everybody playing that particular hole. That plan works pretty well for covering the company outings. Now, the best shots for tee stroke analysis would be from this position right here. Make sure you're back far enough so you can see the ball and the golfer throughout the whole swing. A good pro can tell you anything you need to know about your stroke from this position. Just don't get too far in front of the golfer or you might not be shooting too much tape. Now, there's another position over here that's pretty good for stroke analysis. And if you've got a good eye, you can follow the flight path of the ball. This will take a little practice, and above all, make sure you know where old Mr. Sun is sitting before you tilt that lens up in the air. Basically, if you follow this procedure, you can put a very nice sequence of the golfer's game together.
You have to be pretty safety conscious out here, don't you?
Oh, definitely. It's a good idea to stay near the player you're shooting instead of wandering out for a long shot where you might be in the flight path of some foursome on the next hole. And in shooting shots out of sand traps, don't get yourself and your equipment blasted by the sand. Up here on the green, I'd shoot the way I shoot gymnastics. I'd never put a tripod on the green, but I'll squat down and frame up the hole in the foreground at an angle slightly off the intended path of the ball. It's better to stay wide here to include the golfer, the route of the ball, and the hole in the shot rather than panning close up with the ball. The wide shot lets you see if you're reading the green right and gives you a perspective of whether you're over or under hitting the shot.
I can't thank you enough for helping us learn how to shoot sports on this learning tape.
It's been my pleasure.
In the meantime, always keep your left eye on the ball. We don't want to lose any of you. What's our next stop?
Well, I thought one of those beer commercials might be in order.
To the clubhouse, Mr. Adams. In this program, we've shown you the basics of shooting sports for analysis and entertainment. And if you practice the principles you've learned here, you'll have no trouble shooting general informational coverage or satisfying the most analytical of coaches. Then, after you're comfortable with the basic shooting techniques, you can go for the real impact of sports coverage, the human drama. The essence of any athletic competition is the inner man, the individual effort. Learn to find the story within the story. Learn to capture the ecstasy and the agony of victory and defeat. Play the isolated concentration of the athlete against the roar of the crowd. Use cut-ins and cutaways to tell the inner story of competition. Remember that two teams on a football field are really 22 very real human beings engaged in an intense drama of conflict. Theirs are the stories worth finding and telling. They are the human drama. And that's the real story of sports.